Well, Cincinnati, it's been quite an emotional week for us FCC fans as we hopped on a special episode of the show on Thursday night, full of elation and excitement with some new signings rumored to be happening just before the deadline of the summer transfer window. And we were ecstatic. There were 6 of us on the show that night, and we started late because things were just happening. And we were excited to get on together and talk about this. Ready to go Saturday night. Here we go. Final stretch of the season. And the Cincinnati Road Warriors laid an egg at home at TQL Stadium with NYCFC coming into town and showing us, at least for the night, who was boss. Tonight, we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about the new signings and what they may mean for the team tonight here on Cincinnati Soccer Talk on episode 434. Let me introduce our cast. My name's Brian. I'm hosting the show tonight and here with Coach. Coach, you always talked about maybe, taking a night off on the nights that Cincinnati loses. But, man, here you are and talking about one of these goose eggs.
Yeah, everyone tried to keep me out, but I got stuff to say, Brian. I got stuff to say.
Well, I can't wait to hear the stuff you have to say, Coach. So welcome to the show, Nick. Nick, you're back. How you doing tonight, man?
I really wish I was on that Thursday show instead of this one.
Yeah, don't we all? Now, Nick, I believe you had made a prediction the last time you were on the show about how things were going to turn around now that Nick Morgan's back on CST and FCC's just going to go on this winning streak. Yeah,
I did. I had a bunch of appearances early in the season while they were still trying to figure some stuff out. And I think my last appearance was before that Nashville game, which is when they started their big run of 9 wins in 10 games or something like that. Came back after the Charlotte game, which they lost. And I was like, it's okay. We're starting another winning streak. And here I am again after another loss. So this is my last CST. I'm taking myself off the schedule for the rest of the year. Jose, if you're listening, you just take my spot, brother. It's up for grabs.
Joining Justin in no man's land, being banned from CST.
Yeah.
For the things you say or the luck that you bring or don't bring. Well, Nick, I'm not going to lay too much on you tonight. We're glad to have you. Looking forward to talking about the game in this last week with you here on the show. Before we get too far, let's thank our sponsor, Apollo Home. For all that they do for Cincinnati Soccer Talk and for the Cincinnati community. Thank you for all of that. Give Apollo a call for all your HVAC needs. Mention that you're a CST listener, and there may be a little something in store for you. So give Apollo a call or visit them at apollohome.com. All right. I can see already, guys, here in the chat that we've got things backwards a little bit. Rupesh is a little messed up because I'm on the wrong side here. So I'm going to switch us here so he can concentrate the rest of the show. Let's get into our best and worst of the night. Nick, since you joining us again for the first time in a little bit, I'll let you start.
Yeah. So following up on the big Thursday night news, my best is Brenner, and I guess the other two new additions back in TQL Stadium, and not just back in TQL Stadium, but getting a great reaction from the team, from the crowd. A lot of people kind of forget that Brenner didn't have the best exit from FCC, a year and a half ago. A little bit of animosity there. I mean, it was Chris Albright kind of shaded him on an ESPN article a month ago. And so
stop reminding him.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't say any of the things Chris Albright said. But no, to see him back, to see him get a big reaction from the crowd, to see him acknowledge the fans, to hear the little Brenner chants break out in the Bailey after that. It was really cool to see. And we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, but it's good to have him back because I think the player he was in 2022, that's kind of exactly what this team needs right now. I'd say that's the biggest missing piece.
Yeah.
And then the worst was I mean, kind of pick anything else from the game on Saturday. The one thing I'm going to call out is this is another game in which the high press really screwed up Cincinnati's back line. We saw it in that Crew game in Hell is Real a few weeks ago, that blown 2-0 lead. High press comes in. It just all unravels from there. We saw that again this week against NYCFC. And even we're going to talk about the goal. Like, we're going to talk about the breakdown there, I'm sure. But even outside of that, it was just a mess. And a lot of it was caused by the back line not knowing how to handle that pressure from NYCFC.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right on that. I also, back to your comments about how Brenner left, there's been another a teammate of his that has left more recently that is fresher in Cincinnati's memory. And I think the way Brenner left, for the most part, we've kind of forgotten because of the other one this last offseason. So for what it's worth, let's let bygones be bygones. Let's get Brenner back on the field and scoring some goals. Am I right?
What Ryan is saying is we will all boo Yamil Assad whenever he comes back.
That's it. That's the one I was talking about. Coach, how about your best and worst?
Yeah, first, I just want to also say about Brenner that the report is that he called up the team, or Chris Albright or whoever, to apologize, not connected with him being brought in. It was like separate, just like, hey, back when I did that thing, I was kind of a jerk. Sorry. And then since then, things have kind of progressed and gotten better. My best, I got to give a shout to the Silver Samurai, Yuya Kubo, coming back, because I know he divides the fan base. Not everybody loves him. Our own Nate Gilman is not a super big fan. I personally think he does so many things well enough. He can help in so many ways. Having a guy like that down the stretch run to spot start, to come off the bench, could be absolutely huge. And he's a hard worker, and he deserves to be back on the field. So I was just really happy for him and for the team to see him back. And my worst, man, pour one out for the chances that FCC will ever play in a back four again, because I've been begging Pat Noonan to just give it a try. And then Pat Noonan must listen to the show. So Pat, I respect what you did here. You thought, all right, coach, I'll show you. I'll play a back four, but I'll do it with the two slowest center backs we have, Matt Miazga and Nick Hagland. And you won't get a super defensive, solid right back who is terrible going forward, but really good defensively in DeAndre Yedlin. I will raise you one somewhat erratic and spending most of his time, even further up the field than Ender Echenike, Alvis Powell on the right. Oh, and you think you're getting like an Orashanu or somebody who can play a left wing and do something? No, I'll give you Brad Smith out there. Oh, sorry, it didn't work, guys. Never playing a back four again. So that's my worst. Pour one out for ever getting to see that happen.
We joked on Thursday night about getting, bringing in all these guys so we can get Jose to stop griping about the, one goal wins. And maybe Noonan did that because he's like, coach keeps griping about this 4-back. I'll show him. Right.
He tried as hard as he could to lose it 3-0. So
I think, there was a lot of contributors to everyone trying to lose that game 3-0. It was a rough one. I'll say this. We've got, before I get to mine, let's throw some from the chat up here. We've got the best, the game ended, Rupesh there, and the worst, the team didn't seem to care. Yeah, I was, I don't know that I've ever been happier for a game to end since, maybe those first 3 wooden spoon seasons in Cincinnati's history. We've got, Nick in the chat saying we lost. Worst thing that could have happened for us was to be rewarded for such atrocious play. And the worst, non-existent wing play on the left, chaotic wing play on the right. Pick your poison. You guys have both spoken to that already. And then we have, let's see, there was one in here. Where was it? I can't find it now. We'll come back to it if I find it. There's not a whole lot there. There we go. Reinforcements coming. Worst, all the players that were playing. Yeah, no doubt. What a fun one. We'll get into that starting lineup here in a few minutes and why these guys were out there and why, they shouldn't have been out there. My best, I'm going to go back. I'm going to bypass this game completely, and I'm going to go back to Thursday night because the chaos of that day was so much fun. I'm on the, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to that or watch that show live. I was on the soccer field coaching when news was breaking, or I was just getting there to the field when news was breaking. The Brenner was coming back, and my phone was blowing up. And I was so excited. As a coach, I'm not supposed to be looking at my phone, but my watch kept buzzing. I kept pulling my phone out to see what was happening. Are we doing a show tonight? We got to do a show tonight. Who's hosting? We got to start at 9. No, I can't do that at 9. Someone else has to host. No, they can't be. It was chaos, but it was so much fun once we got on that show and talked about the rumors of the signings that were coming. And and then we get to Saturday night and we see the guys in the stadium. They arrive there, they're present, and to watch the game play out the way it did. And so just the total letdown. Again, you could pick your poison, pick a position, pick a player, whatever. Just the total letdown of emotions from Thursday to Saturday night was pretty crazy for me. And then, as an honorable mention, which we'll talk about later in the show, is just the way the goal happened. You guys know this, I look at goalkeeper play and I thought at first, immediately, I was like, oh, Celentano didn't come out fast enough on that. And then I saw the replay and I thought Celentano started really fast and then he stopped. And then by then the defensive backs were already, the center backs were already beat, and he's caught in no man's land. Of course that ball is going to go in the net. So that was honorable mention worst for me, but we'll talk more about that as we go. Let's get into this match here tonight, guys. New York City FC comes into town, and Cincinnati rolls out a starting lineup of Smith on the left, Engel, Miazga, Hagland, and Powell, rounding out the back five. We've got Anunga, Mbuka, and Evander, pretty standard lineup there. And then we have Denke and Echenike up top. Now, let's start with Brad Smith starting that game, because I think we all have thoughts about why he was there and why maybe someone else wasn't. So let me just toss it to you, Coach, to start us off. Brad Smith starting on the left. What are you thinking? What's he bringing before the game starts? I know you're probably not thrilled and super excited about it, but what do you think he's going to bring in that position versus what he did?
First thing I think is, man, that guy's got a nice dome piece. But then after that, it's all negative from there. No, in reality, it's not even just that Brad Smith started on the left. It's that Brad Smith started on the left with Lucas Engel behind him. And it's like that combination is set up for failure, because I've talked about Lucas Engel on this show before, and I've talked about how he is either slow or he plays slow. And what Pat Noonan did with this formation is not just start those guys, but he did it in a way that when FCC were defending, Brad Smith was not even defending as a wing back. He was defending as a midfielder. They were defending more in a back four, like I talked about with my worst. And what that ended up doing is putting Lucas Engel matched up in 1v1 without a lot of center back support, because Matt Miazga couldn't slide all the way over. There was no outside center back there because Lucas Engel would have been the outside center back. And Hannes Wolf cooked Engel over and over and over. Anytime Wolf wanted to get in onto his left, in on goal, he could do it. I went back and watched, and I was writing down time stamps until I finally found one where Engel happened to like trail a leg and barely get a piece of the ball and stop it. I was like, there's the one. So, what's one thing to start a guy who hasn't started, hasn't played a lot, hasn't looked that great when he played. Like, okay, I don't know why, but okay. But then to start him on a side where you don't even have good, fast defensive cover behind him, I just don't get that decision.
And he hasn't played on the left all season, has he? He's been mostly on the right, or always on the right, or has he been on the left at all?
No, Brad Smith is the
left.
Yeah, he's a left back. When he's played on the right, it's been because it's like a force, like back when we had Ray Gaddis play left back for us. It was been more than like that. He has played on the left when he's come in, but generally it's been, even with Lucas Engel behind him, it's been late in the game when, FCC's holding on to a lead and Brad Smith doesn't go forward at all. So then those two guys can at least double team. So like, Hannes Wolf, you get inside of Brad Smith, Lucas Engel is there, as opposed to you get inside of Lucas Engel and you just have open field.
Yeah. And that's what I thought when I saw Brad Smith starting there. I thought, okay, we're going to sit back at least on the left side. We're not going to go forward a whole lot. We're going to play a conservative game and see this out against New York City FC at home. We're going to, just bunker down at least on the left. Maybe we'll go forward on the right with Alvis Powell. And that wasn't the case at all. which we'll talk, I think, about a little bit later in the show. I did find the comment that I was looking for earlier, also from Nick, who says, "Hey, did anyone else notice Brad Smith played an entire half? I had no idea because he kind of disappeared there for a while on that left side. Didn't have a whole lot there." Nick, the starting lineup, your thoughts, whether it's Brad Smith or anyone else, you saw the lineup roll out. Do you think Pat Noonan was not going for the win, or we were just getting some new guys in?
I mean, look, anybody saying Pat Noonan not going for the win, let's take a step back and realize he was missing 2 regular starters on the back line. Actually 3, because 2 were injured, 1 was traded away. So, for everybody to be like, oh, he's not going for the win, he's resting guys. He was trying to plug 3 holes there on the back line. So I don't have the same visceral lineup reaction that some people do. I see what he was going with. It just didn't work out. And I think that's kind of as simple as that. The one thing that I think stood out for me is I get the sense that they're still not exactly sure what to do with Echenike. Sometimes he's on the wing. This last game, he was starting up front. The 2 things we know about him are he's fast and he's a little bit spicy with the ball. He likes to, play around, have some good footwork. It's just, I don't think they're sure how to use that skill set with him quite yet. Like, if he's up front, is he the guy that Sergio Santos or Kai Kamara are, where they're, rushing forward, where they're pressing, where they're trying to create space and lanes for Kevin Denke to come in and make a play? Or is he more of when Luca Orejano plays that forward role, where he's sort of another secondary setup man, playing more so alongside Evander, try to open up things and make plays with the ball for Denke? I don't think they figured that out yet. And that's the same thing, like, on the wing, is he good enough to kind of be the everyday defender on the wing? That to me is, I think the key there is, I think they're trying Ender in a couple of different spots. And maybe that's why the rest of the lineup was a little bit of a hodgepodge.
Yeah. There's a lot of speculation about Ender playing that right wing back. But we just brought in a new signing. Remind me how to pronounce that name, Coach.
Mark Zook.
That's
what it says in the official release. When you hear people say it on TV, whatnot, it's Marchuk is what they say. So who knows?
Yeah. Is it Orellano or Oreshano? Right.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of talk of him coming in, and then again, where does Echenike fit? Is he going to be the left wing back until Oreshano comes back? Where does he fit? He's a guy that. Go ahead, Coach.
I just will say we didn't until this match really see Ender play out wide. He's played only kind of in that forward position, and even as a lone forward when FCC were down to 10 for a little bit. When in this match, to start the second half, when he moved out wide, the first 2 touches that he got on the ball were in behind. One, he got way in behind up the wing, and then his cutback was not good enough, and it was just easily cleared, but it looked dangerous. The other time, the ball switched from the left all the way to the right, and he got played in. And then instead of beating his man with speed to his right, he cut it back on his left, and that's where he hit that kind of tame shot out and missed the frame. But I think that any coach watching knows how best to use Ender, and it is out wide, running in behind. Like, that is what you have to do with a guy that fast. I don't understand for the life of me why they're trying to play him in this hybrid role, like an Oreshano, like Nick said, where he's kind of dropping in and trying to receive the ball in the half space. And what Oreshano does great there is he's able to receive the ball, wriggle out of pressure, and then dribble forward. We haven't seen Ender do that yet. When he's dribbled the ball in transition, it's been because he's been played into space and he can go, and then he turns on the jets, which that's all well and good, but he does not know how to find that space because he's not used to keeping his head on a swivel and finding those pockets. He needs that the safety and comfort of that sideline so he knows which way to face when he's receiving the ball.
Yeah, and I think the argument can be made that Oreshano, when he was at his best last season, was playing out wide and cutting in, doing the same thing with that speed. When he's got space in front of him, 1 man to beat, 2 men to beat, he can do it. It's, when you get him in tight spaces, he does have the footwork and the speed to wriggle out of it. We just haven't seen that from Ender yet. So I 100% agree with that. I think we need to get him out wide in better spaces, in better places for him to use the ball, to get a ball and to get down the field. Now, the thing that I want to see from Ender a little bit more going forward is, a decisive ball into Denke or Kamara or Brenner or whatever. I just feel like he gets down there and is little uncertain. Do I beat this last guy and shoot? Do I put the ball across? It's a little indecisive for me, but I like the speed. I like him out wide, and I'm looking forward to good things moving forward with Ender. But I think you're right, Nick. We just haven't seen him in that right spot long enough yet this season to really know what he can do.
And then can I add, Brian, that it came up, I think Rupesh might have said it in the chat, like the other thing about this is we talked about partnerships on the left when you have Brad Smith and Lucas Engel. You basically have Brad Smith and younger Brad Smith, right? Over on the right, you have Alvis Powell and younger Alvis Powell. What is Ender Echenike other than a guy that's like all speed and going to go and try to beat somebody 1v1, right? You have two guys that probably their weakest area of their game is knowing when to beat someone and when not, and having a little bit of that erratic play, like a rocky touch or when you're like a lack of concentration. So you have two guys over there, neither of whom are going to share the right traits to work well together. And partnerships are such a key thing. It's why you see like Buka and Obi or Buka and Anunga work well together. But then we've seen Obi and Buka or Obi and Anunga play together, and it was a disaster, right? You have to have complementary pieces.
Yeah. So that was, I believe it was Nick's comment there. I just put up on the screen.
Sorry,
Powell
Nick.
and Ender. Bad combo on the same side. I think again, when we get Ender in the right spaces with the right people behind him, I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can bring, what he can do. I did have the thought, Coach. It's funny you say that, Powell and younger Powell on that side and their speed. Like I even said I think I had some people over watching, and I said, I think those are two of the fastest players in Major League Soccer. Like legitimately, I think Alvis Powell was like the second fastest player in Major League Soccer a few years ago. And Ender's right up there with him. And so I love having that speed. If we could get the speed on either side of the field and not the same side of the field, I think there's something that could be said for that. Now, we did have, we could talk about, let me ask you guys this. You want to go into playing out of pressure or the guys that we had returning coming off the bench in the bench play in this game?
I mean, I don't have too much to say about the bench. I mean, it was Kubo, who was never going to start and never going to play more than 15, 20 minutes. Kenji Mobadem got subbed off after subbing on, so I don't think there's a lot to say there.
Or Yuya Kubo.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing you have to say is, somebody I think in the comments said Steven Jimenez.
Yeah,
sure, maybe that's the one person you look at and say, how can I use him a little bit creatively? But if you got Anunga and Buka back there, there's not really a space for his preferred position. I think the only person you would look at is, okay, do we do Dado up front and move Echenike out wide? That's the only question for me. But no, I think the press was the story of this game. Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Coach, with the pressure that we've talked about this time and time again, right, on the show, when teams bring pressure, Cincinnati struggles to break it, and especially with this back line that we had in this particular match. It was difficult to break through the middle. It was difficult to get out wide because you already mentioned Brad Smith and the kind of his positioning a little bit. Let's talk about that breaking the press, or the challenge to break the press this week.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things going on here, but the thing that I noticed the most is I talked about last week how the center backs were stretching wide, the wide center backs. And then when they received the ball, they had the option to play up the line to the wing back or up the seam to an Evander or a Buka or into Kevin Denke's feet, and how well that worked having those two options. In this match, it struck me that they never played it up the seam. They never played it up the middle. They would just ponderously simply float it from side to side and then give it to a wingback. There was a play when Matt Miazga gave the ball to Lucas Engel from like 4 yards away, when I paused it and I looked, and there's a giant passing lane if Matt would pass with his left foot and split lines into Evander sitting in front of that back line with room to turn and run at the defense. He played it instead to Engel, who immediately was under pressure because there was another defender 4 yards from him, and he just hoofed it up the line, and it was a turnover. And that's just one example. It was over and over. If you're not going to play the ball up the middle, then you have to swing that ball so fast side to side and even skip a player. It needs to not go from Hagelin to Miazga to Engel. It needs to go from Hagelin to Engel, right? Skip a player, get it there quicker so he can get the ball up the field. And when it doesn't help that you have a player in Matt Miazga, who I think is a good passer, but he started feeling really shaky trying to play in transition. You could tell. And I think he noticed, like, oh crap, I don't have Miles here. I have Nick Hagelin, who does a lot of good things, but he is not fast. Not anymore anyway. He used to be fast-ish for a guy that size. Now he's not. So Matt didn't want to turn the ball over. And you have a guy in Lucas Engel who sometimes he's really good on the ball and sometimes he's not. He's so erratic. And Nick Hagelin passing has never been his strong suit. So you have guys who can't pass back there. Add in Brian Anunga, who's not going to be a factor in ball progression. And then neither of the wingbacks had good games. Brad Smith, we already talked about him. He was playing more like a midfielder. He had 0 ball progressions. And I think Alvis Powell had 2 progressive passes. Like, neither of them had very good games in terms of that. So you ended up just swinging the ball back and forth between those center backs and not progressing it at all. And that's no way to break a press. You have to be able to vary the attack up. I'll say one more thing and then I'll get off my soapbox. I want to give NYCFC their flowers for that exact thing. Because if you go back and watch the beginning of that game, they started that game off with like 4 or 5 long balls, like trying to pick out Martinez. There was one where Roman had to come out to the edge of the box and head it away, right? And there was a couple dangerous chances, but they were just like, hey, there's no speed back there. We're going to test it. So now all of a sudden the back line of FC Cincinnati is dropping off a little bit, which we know FC Cincinnati likes to press, and that gives them more room to operate. Instead, we were like, oh, we only have probably the fastest player to ever play in the orange and blue, and Ender Echenike up there. Like, we shouldn't ever try to actually test if he can beat this Justin Hack. Justin Hack, he's tall. He has long legs. He can probably run. We shouldn't test that. And we didn't play any long balls. When we did play Echenike in behind, it was balls played from the center towards the wing, and he was running wide, which means Hack has a great angle to Echenike. Still beat him and got on the ball, but then Hack is right there with him. And then Echenike standing still trying to beat a defender, a good defender, instead of running at him. And you have to vary things up. You have to play some long balls. You have to split lines. If you just swing it side to side and play it to the wing back every time, it's too easy for the press to suffocate you.
Coach, I'm with you there. And I do think there's a couple of missed opportunities to kind of test those holes in the NYCFC midfield when they pressed up. But I do want to talk about something tactically that I noticed too. And that's that when that pressure started, there wasn't a lot of adjustment from the other players on the field, especially I think the FCC midfield a little bit. I think there's this sort of notion that when you face pressure, it's just, we're going to do the same thing we normally do, but faster. And that's not the full story of how to beat pressure. If you're in the midfield, you've got to be a little bit more aware of how deep the opponents are. And you have to be a little bit more creative in giving your defense those those kind of back channel passing lanes. And then, I agree with you. I do think they need to stretch it a little bit more, maybe test that NYCFC backline, see if they can have somebody like Denke or Ender, test that and try to keep them honest. But at the same time, I didn't see Evander coming back and trying to open things up and trying to get in the middle of that press. I didn't really see a lot from Pavel Buka in this game. I saw him making a couple of good defensive plays, but I didn't see him with that same off the ball energy in trying to create space. And, Brian Anunga, that's not his game. I just didn't see enough from that midfield to try to give the backline help in, trying to break that press and trying to transition out forward. That, to me, I think was a big thing in this game. There just wasn't a lot of urgency from other players on the field to help that back line.
Yeah. I think it was this match. I don't think it was a Portland match. I think it was this one that commentators were talking about Evander and just saying, like, if this was the only game you saw him play, you would think that he doesn't care about the game, doesn't care about the team. But you've seen, they even commented, we talked about this on the show several times, like if you look at his body of work, you just know this is his style. He lets the game come to him. And in a game like this, I maybe wanted to see a little bit more of what we saw in Portland, like take over a game, come to the ball, come get it, and don't let it just happen. Don't let it. He's pretty free flowing. We know that. We talk about that. But maybe in a game like this, it was about finding space. But to Coach's point, if our center backs weren't putting the ball in those spaces anyway when they had the opportunities, what else is he going to do? Like, he could be there. He could be in the spot. And they're looking for Brad Smith to advance the ball down the left side, or Alvis Powell, who's maybe further up the field than he should be to get on the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Evander was right on his season averages for touches and touches in the attacking third. And touches in the middle third. Like it was all basically an average game for him in terms of where he got the ball and how often. So I didn't really see that in terms of Evander not dropping deep. There were times when he dropped too deep in my estimation. And I also would guess that Noonan is trying to constantly be in his ear and say, don't drop so deep. Trust those guys. I do think that you're exactly right that Buka was non-factor. Anunga is never a factor in ball progression, but I think part of what you need for Buka to be able to get the ball and progress the balls, he's got to find those pockets of space. And the NYC midfield and forwards were able to press so far up into that space. There was nothing there. There was no space for Buka to operate in. And so what you have to get then is you have to be able to split lines into Kevin Danke's feet, because that's where the open space is, or into Ender. And Ender is not good at that. So you have to put it out over him, which they weren't doing. And Kevin Danke, they'd give him the ball. And so often it would end up into Kevin Danke. He would do a great job to control it. He would play it wide to Ender. Ender would step on the ball, cut it back to Alvis Powell. And then Alvis Powell's like, ball progression, I don't do that. Cycle it back to Hags, and it's back into the cycle. The horseshoe of sadness, or the umbrella of doom, or whatever you want to call it, where you just pass it around the center backs.
Horseshoe of despair.
Horseshoe of despair.
By Rupesh Sharma. Yeah.
I can tell you. So let me tell you this, and this might be terrible podcasting. You guys just bear with me here. The three center backs in this match. So you have Engel, Hagland, and Miazga, even though, like I said, Engel kind of played a left back, but whatever. They average between the three of them 211.6 touches per 90, which is about 34% of the team's touches in a given match. In this match, they had 256, which was 44% of the team's touches, right? Those players up the middle, Danke, Evander, Buka, Anunga, averaged 201.8 touches per 90, or about 33% of the team's touches in a given match. This time they had 161 touches, which was only 28%. So again, all of the touches, go look at the touches and you'll see 90s for the center backs, and you'll see 50s for the players that you want on the ball. Yeah. What does that tell me? It tells me that either NYC had more players on the field, which I don't think was true, or those center backs were only passing to each other. They were just playing keep away until it's like, oh, I can't do that anymore. I'll force it to a wing back and let them turn the ball over out of bounds.
Yeah. And I will just, because I know we probably want to go to the next topic and everything like that, but I do want to shout out one thing. As much as we're talking about the FCC mistakes here, you do have to give some credit to the way NYCFC defended. And that's a really good defensive team. I think they were entering that game 4th in the league in terms of shots allowed. So they're a very strong defensive team, and they knew how to play FCC. We saw that the same thing back in October, unfortunately, was they knew how to take the threat out of FCC, and that's exactly what they did tonight.
Yeah. I want to get to a couple comments here as we wrap up this segment. Rupesh says, Brian, doesn't a goalie have to either go or sit back? Halfway is going to mostly get you burned. Absolutely, Rupesh. We talked about that earlier, I think pre-show. Like my first thought when that goal happened was Celentano was too slow off his line. And then I looked at it again and I realized Celentano was actually pretty quick off of his line, but then he stopped. And when he stopped, you saw the play from the other angle that Nick Hagland had already been beat. Matt Miazga had already been beat. Neither one of them were catching him. And Miazga points to, Hagland points to Celentano like, this is your ball. And I think that's when Celentano actually stopped. at that same time. So one was already beat, wasn't catching up. The keeper that started fast stopped, and then there's all that space for the attacker to make a decision, and he buried it, right? So absolutely, Rupesh, that is a mistake there. And now again, should the center backs have done something different, shifted over, intercepted that? Absolutely. But a goalkeeper has to come or stay, and he kind of did both.
And I'm going to add to that. Jeff Reuter, who is an MLS reporter and he knows a lot of people, said that he was talking to another team's goalkeeping scouts and coaches about just goalkeepers in the league. And Roman Celentano came up, and these scouts said that Roman Celentano is the slowest goalkeeper to come off of his line. And they said he will never get to the next level in terms of being a national team goalkeeper, being one of the best goalkeepers in the league, unless he figures that out. And I think that indecisiveness is some of that.
Yeah. Good point. Now I want to go to the other end of the field, right? And we've talked about the few touches that we had on the attacking end, but the lack of creativity we've talked about a lot. Pat Noonan has talked about, I think he even mentioned it after this game, right? And post game. So we've got Ender up there, who hasn't played a whole lot for FCC, partnered with Denke, who had kind of came into his own earlier in the season, and he's getting back in the flow of things. And then Evander, that is incredibly creative with what he does. What would you change? Like, what would you do different? Like, how do you, other than on the training ground, you work on some things, but in a game like this, how do you change up the creative play up top with those three? Do you bring in someone else?
I mean, the obvious answer is you could bring in somebody else. So somebody like Dado is going to be more creative than Ender. But I also think as coaches, you can put in some general principles or patterns of play where you're going to say, like, Ender, I want you to hug the touchline. And every time that somebody has time and space and looks up, I want you to run in behind. And you might only get it 1 out of every 5, but you're going to be like the wide receiver. You're going to run around every time. And when you do get it, it's going to be dangerous. Right. And if you do that, that defender is going to have to drop with you. Hey, Evander, every time there's time and space and somebody looks at Ender and he runs in behind, I want you to float immediately into that space that he is vacating. We're going to try to get you the ball in that pocket of space and then let you create from there. Like, it's just a basic idea. And it seems to me like Pat Noonan loves to, like, he is that there's a caricature of a coach who was a forward. Right. And Pat Noonan was a forward as a player who coaches really hard on the defense because they know what they hated to play against. But then they're like, you just go play offense and score goals. Right. That's how I did it. Just go do it. And I don't know if that's what Pat is doing, but I don't see a lot of discernible patterns in the offensive third. There's not like a Denke, I want you to show and get the ball at your feet every time, or I want you to float off the back shoulder every time, and every time in inverted commas, because it's not every time. You want them to vary it up a bit, but like, this is the default that we do. And I think a big part of the problem, which hopefully this will translate to the next part, is there's no danger from wide areas. Alvis Powell, it might beat you to the inside and blast the ball into Rosie, although he had a left-footed volley on goal somehow in this match. Anyway, neither here nor there. Without Luke Orishano on the left, Brad Smith's not doing anything over there to be dangerous. So
yeah, we saw that last year too. Like, if you look back and you take Lucho Acosta out of the equation, where's the creativity? It all centered around him. And so maybe we didn't even have the patterns of play then when we were scoring more goals. We just had one man that was creating the opportunities for it. And so maybe Pat is still trying to figure that out, the loss of a guy that you depended on every creative thing coming from, because Evander's not that guy. But Evander's going to bury you in different ways than Lucho Acosta did. So I do want to transition, Coach, into that next segment. So I think that's a good time to flip us over to talking tactics. And you've done a little bit of scouting on some of the new players coming in. So let's put this game behind us and let's look to the future and the hope of FC Cincinnati for the last bit of the season. I'll turn it to you, Coach.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about Mark Zook, Guidi, Jabari, and Brenner, right? And with the caveat that most of these guys, it's really hard to get game film on them. I've watched a bit of game film on Mark Zook and Jabari. With Guidi, it's only stats and looking at prior games. And then obviously there's Brenner. So by all accounts, Mark Suk really likes to dribble, but he's not like an Orishano 1v1 dribbler. He likes to dribble in space. So he likes to get on the half turn and go. He ranks in the 91st percentile over the last calendar year for progressive carries per 90 amongst wide attackers. So that what that means is when he gets the ball and there's space in front of him, he's going to take it with speed, right? He's also a good crosser of the ball, and not just a crosser like where he's going to get in there like Julian Gressel and whip a ball. He actually does really good at putting the ball on the ground and kind of bending it in behind those kinds of crosses, which you know who loves to finish those? Brenner, one touch finishes, and I'm sure Kevin Danke would love that as well. He ranked in the 63rd percentile over the last year for expected assisted goals. So that is going to add some danger on the right that simply hasn't been there. And if you put either an Orishano or if Ender plays some left wing back, if you put a left wing back out there that can also be dangerous, all of a sudden you have some wide attacking talent, not just guys out there who can help you keep possession. Jabari, to me, we sang Kevin Kelsey's praises. This looks like a Kevin Kelsey analog to me. Like, he's really tall. I think they list him at 6'6". He, at least on FBref, and he looks like he's got pretty good feet. And the thing that really stood out to me in the film that I watched is he seems like a pretty good passer for a big dude. He had like some passes that had me like, wait, was that him? Like looking like a number 10. So if he can be a big target out there, but actually link play and turn and spray some of those balls, like we saw Brandon Vasquez do in the year that him and Brenner had such success, that could be huge. Let's move to Samuel Gidi. Gidi, the report is from the people that have actually seen him play that he's really good on the ball. Think Darlington, not Nagby. He's not going to turn the ball over. He eats up a ton of touches. He moves the ball, but he doesn't just cycle it side to side or backwards. This isn't good on the ball, Brian Anunga, or good on the ball, Junior Moreno. This is a guy who, in his last match for his former club, Zelina, it was only a 1-0 win, so it's not like they dominated. Gidi had 81 touches, created 2 chances, one of them designated a big chance, and had 10 passes into the final third. So this is a guy that not only is, by all accounts, a good defensive presence, but also can move the ball. So whether that means he spells Buka a little bit, or maybe you bring him in alongside Buka when the team's chasing a goal, that's a good option to have. And then, of course, you have Brenner, a guy with fantastic feet, really good at linking play, really smooth touch, pretty good passer of the ball, pretty good dribbler, an excellent one-touch finisher. And you put all these new pieces in, and you don't expect necessarily the young guys to contribute right away. But what it does is it just gives you all of these options that are not just better players than you had in the same role before, but actually better players for the role.
And Coach, I want to ask you this, because we just talked in the last segment about lack of creativity up front. I think a big reason was Kevin Danke had a different style of co-forward with him, it seems like, every start, and he's playing a little bit different. Now that Brenner's coming in and we know his game, we know he likes to be that guy that kind of sits back, runs behind the main striker. We saw that with Brandon Vasquez and why they had such good chemistry up front with Lucho there. Do you see him maybe being that missing link in creativity? You have that consistent attacking 3 now. Do you see that maybe opening up more of what we were just talking about that FCC needed up front?
At its best, absolutely, because both of those guys, Danke and Brenner, are going to be kind of good at dropping in and linking play and kind of playing one touch back to goal. And both of them are pretty good at running off the back shoulder. So what that should allow is that I put out a YouTube video early in the season about how strikers can work at pinching and stretching together. One pinches towards the ball, the other one stretches in behind, and that gets the center backs having to cross over each other. It's exactly what NYC did to FC Cincinnati, except it was attacking mid Maxi Morales, who would go up and make it Matt Miazga pay attention to him, and Martinez was on Hagland, and then Maxi would start to drop in, and Miazga would start to suck in, and then all of a sudden you'd have Martinez matched up 1v1 on Nick Hagland running in behind. And that's how they scored their goal. Like, Maxi Morales received the ball in the hole, Matt Miazga started to step, and then 2 more passes and Martinez was in behind. So at its best, absolutely. The risk there is that they're going to get in each other's way. They're going to do the same thing at the same time because there's no chemistry, or they're both going to want to be the guy that runs in behind to be finishing, and neither are going to want to drop in. Those are the sorts of things you worry about.
Yeah, to hear you say that, Nick, we know how Brenner plays. Does Kevin Denke know how Brenner plays? Have they, seen each other? I think it's going to take some time to build that chemistry. Hopefully not as much time as, we would have maybe at the beginning of the season so we can get some things done. I want to talk a little bit more about these players and what realistically we think they'll bring to the team when we get a chance to see them. We do want to thank Beyond Exercise, though, as we move on. As our second half show sponsor, Beyond Exercise is a local physical therapy and fitness business that helps people stay active and injury-free. They've helped some of our local MLS Next Pro, and FCC Academy players with their health and performance needs. Check out their suite of services at gobeyondexercise.com. Now, let's get into some reality here, or speculation on reality. So Thursday night, like I said, we were crazy excited, most of us, about Brenner coming back to town, about Marzook coming in, and what rumors we've heard about him. None of us had seen him play at that point or play much at that point. And I know in the chat the next day, in our CST chat, Coach goes, you said something, Coach, about the reality of, Brenner hasn't played in a while. Like, it's going to take some time. And my first words to you were, well, you would have been a lot of fun to have on the show last night, right? But I do think you bring some reality and perspective to our team a little bit in that sense, but even to the Cincinnati fan base. And so I want to let's talk about, a guy like Marzook maybe running in on the right wing back. He's great at crossing. We've got a guy like Brenner who's great at getting on the end of crosses. We've got a guy like Gidi who we've heard is good on the ball and can progress the ball. When do we realistically think we will see them start to contribute in the ways that we've heard about them in a new system with new players around them?
Man, I will tell you, this is where the Supporters Shield is not the trophy to go for, that we've had this ongoing debate in our Slack channel and on this show sometimes, really comes to the fore. Because if you think that the MLS Cup is the thing that you're going for, then you start playing these guys now and you let them figure it out on the field. You figure out what your best 11 is going to be like. If Gidi's going to be a guy who comes in the last 10, 15 minutes of almost every game, and the last 30 minutes if you're chasing a goal sort of thing, you start using him in that role now. And these are kids, and there's going to be, and even Brenner, who's not old, not a kid though, like there's going to be some growing pains, some rough moments of a lack of chemistry, but you figure that out over the last 6 matches, and then you're better, you're hitting the peak of the hill as you are entering into the playoffs. Realistically, Pat Noonan wants to win every game. I'd be pretty surprised, especially with the younger guys, especially with Jabari, with Gidi, if they saw much of the field at all. I don't even think Gidi is in the country yet for sure. So he might not. He might be a next year sort of addition.
Yeah, yeah. Nick, what do you see and what do you expect from these guys coming in this late in the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be sort of an ease-in situation. I mean, I think Brenner is going to be the big one that I think you try to get out there right away. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the starting lineup sooner rather than later, maybe 20 minutes against Philly coming up. And then, you want a consistent somebody to play alongside Kevin Denke. As for the rest, I think, like Coach said, there is some leeway to kind of be patient with guys like, Samuel Gidi, because you're so loaded at that position, and you're going to get, hopefully, Obi back by the time the playoffs start. So that's kind of your other big acquisition headed to the playoffs. I'm really interested in Matt Zook, because that to me is somebody that I think adds a different dimension to the right side now that DeAndre Yedlin's gone. We talked about, you want wings to kind of progress the play a little bit. It seems like he might have the skill set to kind of help with that on the right-hand side. I wouldn't be surprised, to see him get some minutes, but at the same time, we just talked about, Ender, that kind of being his game on the right side. So I think you might see some experimenting from Pat Noonan as we get closer towards the end of the season. There might be a couple games where you have guys playing in different roles with different expectations, but like I said, like on paper, these are all great additions. As somebody said in the chat, it's now up to Pat Noonan to figure out how to use all of them.
Yeah, I think honestly, Mark Zook is the one outside of Brenner that I could see locking down a starting spot immediately. It's a position that's pretty open right now. I mean, the number one on the depth chart is Alvis Powell out there. Ender has not proven that he can defend at all. He played some, not just right wing back, he played some right back in that game, and he looked pretty bad. He almost gave up a goal. Wasn't just his fault because the cross came in, but letting a runner get inside of him late in the game. He got cooked a couple times, and he's not strong. He gets bodied off the ball. So like that could be something where maybe he comes in at the end of games to try to, cause some havoc when FCC need a goal. I could see Mark Zook contributing as a starter nearly immediately.
Well, and that's the one position we've talked about all season that FC Cincinnati has been missing, is somebody that can play naturally in the wide spaces, left or right, and can send balls in to a guy like Kevin Denke, who just chews up easy crosses and can finish them. That's how he, won the Golden Boot in the Belgian league, was the one-time finishes. We've seen him create on his own, but he's needed guys that can send the ball across. And so I do think he'll get some time early on. Brenner, absolutely. But again, playing with Evander, I think he'll probably have some more chemistry with Evander than Kevin Denke from the get-go. And so I see him contributing pretty quickly. But here's the thing, guys. It sounds like, we know Pat Noonan has said, I want to win every game. Like, we go for it every game. That's what I want to do. It's not going to happen, but that's the plan. It does feel like, and I mentioned this Thursday night, if you were listening to that show, it feels like we're taking our cues from the Cincinnati Bengals and just putting all our guys on offense. Like, let's bring in all these guys that can push the ball forward and attack, and we're just going to outscore our opponent. Now, that is, not in any way to devalue our defensive line, like our back line with Miles Robinson and Matt Miazga and Nick Hagelin, Teenage Shadabi, and anybody else, Alvis Powell, who would be back there. We do have a solid line, but I think that's, as we look back to Alvaro Barreal days, we've got a guy that is not a great defender, but can get forward and is really creative up top with a guy like Lucho Acosta. We have Luca Orishano, who's not a great defender, but he can get forward, right? If we get wing backs that can get forward, I think it's going to be hard for teams to keep up, to catch us with the pace that we have on those wings.
Yeah, can I also say about that, most teams, when they're defending in more of a transition moment, only have 4 defenders out back anyway, because most teams are playing in a back 4 with one outside back at a time going forward. So you have the 2 center backs, one outside back that's not all the way forward, and then you have a defensive center midfielder. So you have 4 of those guys. FC Cincinnati, this has been my biggest problem with them sticking with 3 center backs, is they've had 3 center backs primarily defensive. They've had Anunga or Obi starting, primarily defensive. That's already 4. Then they've had DeAndre Yedlin, that sure, he might be up the field, but he is a primarily defensive player. That's 5. So they've had 5 primarily defensive players out there on the pitch all the time. And you don't need that many, at least in transition defense. And then once you get in set defense, you have, if you have your 3 center backs there, you'll have, let's say right now, Anunga. Buka is a reasonably good defender as a center back there. And then those wingers, those wing backs just have to prove that they can hold up in 1v1 defense with help, because they have an outside center back right behind them, which should be doable it was doable for Barreal. It's doable for any professional who's willing to put in the work.
One question I had is, and I don't know, so I haven't seen any reports. Andres Davila that signed a short-term deal for the League's Cup match, I believe. Is that short-term deal? Was that just that one match? Was that the deal with him?
Yeah.
Do we know?
I think so, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. He comes in as a guy that was, one of the best, most anticipated players in the 2007, I think, age group in the world. Like, he was highly ranked. It was the reports on him. So I don't know what he's done with FCC2. I was excited to see him score in his opening, his debut for the senior roster. But he's a guy that maybe could be developed under guys like Kevin Denke and Brenner. But I don't think we'll see him anymore with guys like Jabari coming in either, and the guys that we already have on the pitch. So upcoming schedule, we've got Philly, we've got Nashville at home the next 2 matches. We've got Galaxy away, Orlando back at TQL, which they are always hard to manage at TQL Stadium. They seem to play really well against us at home. New York, Red Bull, and then Montreal to close out the season. I believe, we did some calculations on Thursday, I think, or maybe it was last week, and said Cincinnati needs at least 12 points of the last 7 matches that they have, and they didn't get any points in this last match. So realistically, that's to stay at the top of the Supporter Shield race, right? So realistically, in these last 6 matches that Cincinnati has left, where do you see them finishing in the race for the Supporter Shield?
I mean, I think it's top 3. I think that's attainable. I think we're kind of on the back heel a little bit when it comes to actually sort of securing the front runnership in the Supporter Shield. And you look at the schedule, Philly is Philly. I mean, that's a really tough team. And we talked about backline communication issues. Hey, guess what? Philly's one of the best scorers in the MLS this year.
And they were not expected to do anything this year.
No. And they have blown everybody's expectations away. You have Nashville, who's been an incredibly tough team. The LA Galaxy, who were the butt of every joke in the MLS, are now starting to put things together, and they have a very talented roster. It's just, you kind of have a gauntlet of teams coming up here, and, with a bunch of changes to the roster, I'm not sure that you're going to look at any of these games and say, okay, FCC is a clear favorite. Here's where we pick up 3 points. It's going to be tough. And I wouldn't be surprised if, they're not the Supporter Shield winners at the end of the year. But I agree with what Coach said earlier. Like, you get some of these young guys or new additions in the lineup and you get them adjusted, you get them some minutes, you get them a role to play with. I think that's the main goal, because then I think you have a very good chance at running towards the MLS Cup, because this is, on paper, one of the most talented rosters in the MLS right now.
Yeah, if I was going to handicap the Supporter Shield race, I would not put FC Cincinnati at the front of that pack, but I am maybe a little more optimistic than Nick, it sounds, in that I think that they'll be right there. I think not because they're going to necessarily win, you get all these 12 points or whatever, but because all of these teams are taking points off of each other and have schedule congestion. That's why I think Philadelphia has a really great chance, because not only are they first in the East right now, I think actually first in the Shield right now.
They are first in the Shield.
Yeah, San Diego only picked up a point against Portland. Not only are they already first, but they also have an easier schedule. Miami has an easier schedule, but they have a ton of congestion, so I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped a few matches. FC Cincinnati is kind of not in charge of their own destiny, in that if they win, they win it, because Philly and San Diego are ahead of them. But I think they're in charge of their own destiny, and that I think all of those teams will drop points, and FC Cincinnati should be right there with a chance to win it, or be 3 to 6 points back.
Yeah. My preseason, I didn't think they'd start fast, and they would, I think, take the Shield or top 3 at the end of the season. It seems like it's going the other way. Like, they started faster than I anticipated. And now at the end of the season, we're starting to drop points when I thought we'd be ramping up. But again, we've got some injuries. We've got some new guys coming in. It'll be interesting to see how they finish. My hope is, excuse me, Coach, you said these teams will drop some points, that some of the teams that are in the race will face Cincinnati in Philly, right? So we could flip places next week, even in that match, if we take 3 off of Philly. And so excited for that. It has been interesting to see, like, there's been, from the stretch of games where we saw Miami twice, we saw Columbus sandwiched in there, and we saw, I think, Orlando was part of that. We said, this is the toughest stretch of the season. And now, like, 2 weeks later, we said, man, they're coming in with some tough teams. And now at the end of the season, all the teams I feel like that are coming into play Cincinnati are hot at the right times when Cincinnati plays them. And so, yeah, we're rounding out what looks like it should have been an easier schedule, but I think these teams are getting hot here at the end, and hopefully Cincinnati can as well. If you're interested in, the content we produce here on Cincinnati Soccer Talk, we'd love to hear from you. We did get some questions in our email this week. We didn't get a chance to talk, but I will throw it out to Coach here, leading into his final thought from Marine Desmarais. Send us a note, send us a question for the show if you're not in the chat here at feedback@cincinnati-soccer-talk.com. If you'd like to join us and help support the content that we produce here on this show, on Jersey Swap, and all the other shows that we were producing this year on YouTube, Soccer in Our Area, and those sorts of shows, join us on Patreon at cincinnati-soccer-talk.com/support, and all kinds of fun content over there. We'd love to see you on that side. Now, let's round out the show here, guys, with our final thoughts. And I do want to read this email we got from Maureen Desmarais. And she says this. She says, she never thought I'd say this, but sure looked like the problem Saturday night falls squarely on Coach Noonan. Terrible starting lineup unless something's going on, so players that should have started didn't. She says it's hard to believe that 11 plus players had a bad night versus bad coaching that particular night. So with that leading us into our final thoughts, Coach, I'll let you pick up there and share what's on your mind.
Yeah, so first I will start by saying that a coach's primary responsibility, everyone loves to say coaching and tactics are important, but talent is more important, 100%. But within that, your primary responsibility, what you do with your tactics, is put your players, your talent, in a position to succeed. And Pat Noonan absolutely did not do that. Fine, there are choices you have to make because you don't have players. Putting Brad Smith and Lucas Engel out there together on the left side when we know that NYCFC likes to play a little bit direct, and they have some really good wingers that are good, fast, and dribbly. Right? It's not a good choice. Putting Ender Echnike and Alvis Powell out there on the right, not a good choice. So I think that Maureen is right, that Pat Noonan was too clever by half. He outcoached himself trying to think of how to do this. No, and if I do this, I'll tweak the formation in this way. Nobody knew what they were doing. Even your players like Matt Miazga, who are generally rocks out there, looked uncomfortable. That said, my final thought is, and I'm going to preface this by saying I'm about to call a bunch of people dumb. All of you all out there, you know who you are. I love you. I don't actually think you're dumb. This is kind of a bit. And also, I don't think you're right, but not dumb. That said, saying that Pat Noonan is on the hot seat either this year or next year if he doesn't win an MLS Cup is the dumbest thing that I've heard this week. It's dumber that it's okay or even necessary to boo people because that's how we show we're some kind of manly, great home crowd. It's dumber than the idea that the Supporter Shield is a meaningless trophy. FCC have won more points since Pat Noonan took over than any other MLS team. And it's not even particularly close. It's by 10 or 12. It's not neck and neck there. Single elimination tournaments are not a good judge of who the best team is. Think about the past MLS Cup champions. Think about last year's runner-up, the New York Red Bulls. Think about NCAA tournaments. Oftentimes the best team doesn't win. In fact, they rarely do. It takes luck. It takes things to go right. It takes referees to generously accept your loving and thoughtful gift of pizza when you bring it to their locker room. Okay. I get that people aren't shield truthers like me, and fine. But here, I think this is a pretty good analog. If you say the EPL is a title that is similar to the Shield, even though I get it, it's their championship, but just hear me out. The trophy that all of those big teams really want is the Champions League, right? So if you say the EPL is the Shield and the Champions League is like MLS Cup, you know who it took 8 seasons of coaching to win the UEFA Champions League? Pep Guardiola. He won 8 of what we would call shields. Not 8. He didn't win all those years, but he won, I think, 5 shields before he won the Champions League. Imagine if after 4 or 5 seasons if Manchester City fans were like, fine, you've been the best team over all this time and you've showed consistent success, but you haven't won the big trophy. So you're on the hot seat, buddy. Put up or shut up. It takes luck to win single elimination tournaments. Pat Noonan has won so many games and showed he can make this team consistently excellent. I just said before I started this that Maureen is right. Noonan messed this up, and Noonan makes mistakes. That doesn't mean that if he doesn't win MLS Cup, but he wins a Shield, which he just did a couple years ago, that he should be on the hot seat. I rest my case.
I really don't know how we end the show better than that, Coach. Like, I wish I would have had you go last. That was fantastic. No, good rant there, man. And 100% agree with that. On that note, then I'm going to transition and let Nick speak to his final thoughts here.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, man. You can't have me like go before Coach there. That's a transition there. Look, all this.
I needed a buffer before I talked. So you go, and then I'll see if I can up my game at the end here.
Yeah, I'll be the 6-man tag match between the 2 title matches and the bathroom break match. Look, I will say all this talk over the past week has been dominated by transfers. And the one thing I will say about FCC is that, my God, is it refreshing to see a Cincinnati team actually say screw it and go for it. Say what you will about, management of the team, whatever. Say what you will about tactics, but this is a club who since 2020 has been among the biggest spenders in the MLS. And we're talking about teams in major cities that have been around forever in terms of American soccer. And FCC has gone out and has thrown money at free agents. They've gone for it. They've gone out and scouted some of the best up-and-coming players. They've got stars like Kevin Denke coming over, who had some Premier League interest before he came to FC Cincinnati. This is a team that's going for it. And it's so refreshing to see it, especially when you look over at the Bengals and it's just, tedious to get Trey Hendrickson a contract. It's tedious to sign their first round pick because they don't want to include a clause that's in every other rookie contract in the NFL. You look at the Reds and it's like you don't want to get too attached to Ellie De La Cruz because in 3 years he's going to be doing what he's doing right now in LA or New York or Chicago. It's so good to see FCC management invest in this team and go all out in doing whatever it takes to try to get a championship to Cincinnati. And that is refreshing to see in this city.
Yeah. The Bengals did sign Trey Hendrickson today. So maybe they're going for it too.
It took way longer than it needed to. I'll just say that.
Absolutely did. Coach, I don't mean to chip
Jose knows that I meant with Manchester City. He knows that. I talked about City and City fans. Jose is just so good at picking the hole in my argument and exposing it to everyone. So thank you, Jose.
For those who aren't watching live, Jose did correct Coach and say Guardiola won his first Champions League with Barcelona in his first year as coach with that club. It didn't take him 8 years. So thank you, Jose, for your knowledge and your facts there. I'll just wrap up the show with this, guys. I talked about the emotional roller coaster of this week and all the signings and all the transfers and all of that on Thursday. And then, I pronounced that wrong, Rupesh, I believe. Really butchered that because I was thinking about my final thought and not what he was going to say. So I apologize for that. But the emotional roller coaster of this week it's been a ride. And, we talk about, the letdown on Saturday night and what was Noonan thinking. And let's just put this in perspective, right? He played with the personnel he had. We've got some injuries. We've got guys that are just coming back from injuries, and Yuya Kubo, who did see some time. We've seen guys like Kenji Mboumedem get some decent minutes and play decently well. So he comes off the bench and he didn't have a great night. Who are we going to play on the wings as a wing back? We got rid of DeAndre Yedlin. We don't have anybody yet that has stepped into that role, who's with the team yet, who's been cleared or whatever since Thursday night signing. So we played with the players that we had available. And if there was a game to drop in this final stretch, I think this was the game to drop against New York City FC. Cincinnati stayed near the top. We got passed by San Diego. We got passed by Philly. But we're going to see Philly next week. And so if there was a game to drop with, the lack of personnel that Cincinnati had to throw out on the field this week, New York City is the one that I'm like, all right, let's drop this game. Let's go for it against Philly. That creates some separation. We play Nashville in a couple weeks after that. Creates a little more separation if we bring those 3 points home. So let's get these guys into the team. Let's get them adjusted. Let's get them on the training pitch. Let's create some chemistry, and let's go for it in these last couple matches. Let's put this one behind us. And Coach, I'm with you, man. Let's go for the Shield. Let's go for the Cup. Let's go for it all this year. We've got the personnel, we've got the talent to do it, and I expect Cincinnati to make some waves here in the postseason. So, thanks for joining us tonight on Cincinnati Soccer Talk. We look forward to talking to you next week after a win against Philly at TQL. We'll see you then.